So I wanted to be an aircraft engineer, and I wanted to be build them, fly them, make them, take them out, design them, everything. And I did that as a boy. I made little aeroplanes, which is where I first got involved in Leonardo da Vinci, because I wasn't really getting much of an education, but I found 3 volumes of the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci. They fascinated me, and one particular phrase in there was, "Genius is the capacity for taking pains," said Leonardo da Vinci. And that I thought was an interesting thing, that perhaps there isn't such a thing as genius, it's just such a thing as some poor guy who works harder than anyone else to get there, to achieve. And so maybe all geniuses really are losers who try harder. And I thought maybe that was what it was, and that, it made me try to do something, because I wasn't doing very well. I didn't want to be an aircraft engineer in the end. And then I went to Woolworths to try being a manager of a store. And I was sweeping out finally, the store. You go right to the front, after going down all the aisles, you get all the stuff to the front, you get it all out in the front, and you got to pick it up. And the man who passed by, just as I was doing that, was my old headmaster, who looked at me and he said, "You've really buggered your life up, haven't you?" He said, if you tried harder, you may have done something, but look at you, sweeping streets, like that, you see. And he was an awful man. He scared the hell out of me, It was out of failure that I grew and tried to do something, because the idea of failing was only failing in whose eyes? Was I failing in my eyes, or was it somebody else who thought I'd fail because it wasn't a proper job? What you do is not a proper job. Never was a proper job. Nobody at school offered me, like a youth employment officer who you have to go and talk to, would have offered me, well, how about becoming a cartoonist who draws strange eyeballs, you could do that. And then finding that that's not at all what you would consider to be a success. I was quite happy at one time to be a law-abiding, decent, wholesome citizen. And then I realized if you want to be that, you're going to have a miserable life, because everyone else seems so miserable within it. And I would prefer to say something or speak my truth clearly as I know it. I did 7 years at the London College of Printing and Graphic Arts, but you see the emphasis being on the graphic arts rather than on the fine arts. So I didn't go to the Slade School of Fine Art or anything like that, but perhaps if I thought about doing it, it's just that I was brought up to go out and earn a living. And that seems to me to be something quite fundamental to the whole idea of it. And I've met people who do art for art's sake, and frankly they've got nothing much going on, there's nothing happening somehow, because there isn't a valid connection between themselves and a motivating force so strong that they can pull other people along with them, or have people say, "I feel exactly like that, you've just expressed it for me." When I looked at my first book, America, I did over here, some of the pictures in it still resonate, still have a feeling of nowness about them. The first drawing I ever did in New York, and it's the one of everyone I realized in New York walked the streets, nobody eye locked. And so I did people in rather twisted poses, like mutants of a kind, all walking through a linear, upright landscape. That drawing still matters in that way, for me, and a few of the others. The one about "Give us a dime, buddy," a gnarled hand, cut and bruised, blue, and sores all over it, And he's just saying, "Give us a dime, buddy, this is a tough city to get started in." Well, that's still as relevant today as it, if you're out in the street there, nobody gives a monkey's what you are, I saw America as a screaming lifestyle, and that screaming lifestyle seemed to me to be a threat. I was fearful of what I saw in Miami. I was fearful about what I saw in New York, in 1970, and then onwards. Watergate, went through all that with Hunter Thompson. And Hunter picked up on that because he could see there was a genuine kind of, not a Puritan here, but someone who was looking through a glass darkly, of his own making. Perhaps you do go out of your way to stay outside, because by doing that you remain objective. A lot of journalism is fatally flawed from the beginning, because it's there to fill a vacuum in people's lives who need news every day of any kind. And misquotes are, in fact, the stuff of all good journalism, And Gonzo is not fanciful at all. It's a kind of reality, but you go to cover a story, but what you end up doing is covering what happened to you during that story. That's really what Gonzo is, I think. There is no story. I have to make one. I just think being creative or being an artist is being someone who attempts to fill a vacuum. There's an absence of something you're about to do, But the world may not need it. That's not important, really. But you need it, or you need to do that something. You feel there is a vacuum to be filled. And the act of creativity is trying to fill the vacuum. I think that's what you do. You make a reason for doing it. There is no reason for doing any of it. And yet there is a reason. And sometimes you want to write. And you don't know why you want to write, but you feel you've got something you want to say. Now, if I want to do this book on philosophy called The Philosophy of French Plumbing, why do I want to do it? I think it's because it's got an earthy touch, sense to it. It's got something anal retentive about it, which is, of course, what is necessary too for an artist. And that's perhaps what I would like to do mostly, is to create a book that actually nobody could quite figure out where it was coming from, But it would intrigue, because that's how I think you could. So it's kind of theatre, isn't it? I mean, a book of pictures and writing, to me, would suggest theatre. If you get a line, say from Hunter, the bats over Barca or something, it was somewhere around Barca that the drugs began to take a hold. You get this image, bats, the cast zooming forward. You add the other dimension to it, but it's crying out for a picture. So there's an interrelationship between all of this stuff, and I think that's probably what artists who do want to write or make music or make a sculpture actually are about. They want to do it all themselves because they realize that the picture they might have painted isn't complete, either without a title, which is writing, or a descriptive thing about painting and about their whole point of view about painting and why they bother to do it in the first place. They need to almost, inform people that I did this because. Wittgenstein said the only thing of value is that you cannot say. You can't quite, you know the thought, but you can't put words around it because you've limited it immediately. But it doesn't stop great writers from doing it somehow, So how did they get around to it? Or is that the secret? Not confronting it head on, but stalking it, and getting to the point by various other means, a much more sort of meandering way, and then striking. If you just suspend your sense of disbelief, for a minute and go off and let the mind do it, and you have to keep reminding yourself, well, why not? I can do that. I can say that. Because I'm only writing this thing. It's not reality. I'm only making this happen. It's the same feeling I like to put into a drawing when you decide that you don't want a head up there, or you don't want to draw politicians' heads. All you want to draw are their legs. And people say, you can't do that. No, yes, you can. And so you start concentrating only on the legs. And you draw that, and it's more insulting, because legs are sort of peculiar things, and all the sort of gubbins that goes around here. The next thing is, I thought for the next election, if I do something, I just draw sphincters. The idea of making sphincters resemble politicians like George Bush, or Al Gore would be rather important, I think. They'd be saying what they are saying. They're talking through their backsides anyway. I don't really believe that artists are necessarily any different to other people, except having this germ in them, that infects them and seizes them in a way that gives them some sort of bacteriological function, to throw stuff out, It's like that. It's a fever. You've got to sort of start your life every morning and think, what is it I believe in today? Or, do I just want to play around today? Yes, I do actually. I want to play around. I've got a hunch that making marks on paper is an interesting way to find out what is in the subconscious, what's driving me, what makes me want to do something. Because I have a point to prove every day, that my existence is worthwhile. Without that existence, the world is a lesser place, say. So you fool yourself every day that that's how necessary you are.